Dr. Eleanor Blackwood lived in a stunning Victorian mansion in Beacon Hill, Boston, Massachusetts, a house that had been in her family for 4 generations. At 62, she was one of the most respected cardiac surgeons on the East Coast, with hands so steady they'd saved over 3,000 lives and a reputation so sterling that patients flew in from around the world just for her expertise. Eleanor was a woman who commanded respect the moment she entered a room. Silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, piercing blue eyes that could diagnose a heart condition from across a hospital corridor, and the kind of quiet confidence that came from decades of holding people's lives in her hands. She wore her late husband's wedding ring on a chain around her neck, a reminder of the love story that had sustained her through 20 years of widowhood. But Eleanor's greatest pride wasn't her medical achievements or her family legacy. It was her son, Brandon. Dr. Brandon Blackwood, 34, was everything a mother could want. A successful cardiologist himself, he'd followed in Eleanor's footsteps with what seemed like genuine passion. Handsome, charming, devoted to his mother. He visited every Sunday for dinner, called every Tuesday to check on her, and had never missed sending flowers on her birthday. For 2 years, he'd been dating Becky Chen, a beautiful trauma nurse who worked at the same hospital. Eleanor adored Becky, finally, someone worthy of her perfect son. Someone who understood the demands of medicine, who could match Brandon's intelligence and dedication. Eleanor was planning to leave everything to Brandon when she retired next year. The house, the investments, the family medical practice her grandfather had started in 1892. Brandon was her legacy, her future, her reason for everything. But perfect facades have a way of crumbling when you're not looking. It started with a phone call on a rainy Thursday evening in October. Eleanor was reviewing surgical notes when her phone rang, an unknown number. Dr. Blackwood? This is Detective Maria Santos with Boston PD. I'm calling about some unusual activity on your financial accounts. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Eleanor's blood chilled. What kind of activity? Large withdrawals, wire transfers to offshore accounts, credit cards opened in your name. We've been tracking a sophisticated identity theft ring, and your name came up. When did you last check your bank statements? Eleanor hadn't checked in months. Brandon handled all her finances now. He'd insisted on it after she'd mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the paperwork last year. Such a thoughtful son, always protecting her from life's mundane stresses. I'll need you to come in tomorrow to review the paperwork, Detective Santos continued. And Dr. Blackwood? Don't mention this to anyone until we figure out what's happening. If someone close to you has access to your accounts. The line went dead, but the implication hung in the air like poison. Eleanor couldn't sleep that night. She sat in her study, staring at the family photos lining the walls. Brandon's graduation from Harvard Medical School, Brandon receiving his first award, Brandon and Becky at last year's hospital gala, looking radiant and in love. At 3 a.m., she did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She logged into her bank accounts. The numbers on the screen didn't make sense. Her retirement account, the one with over $2 million, showed a balance of $847,000. Her checking account was overdrawn. Credit cards she'd never opened showed maximum balances. Eleanor's surgeon hands, famous for their steadiness, began to shake. She spent the rest of the night digging through financial records. Patterns emerged like a nightmare diagnosis. Every withdrawal coincided with Brandon's requests to help with her paperwork. Every new credit card had been opened during their Sunday dinners when she'd leave him alone in the study to take work calls. But the most devastating discovery came when she called her longtime insurance agent at dawn. Eleanor? Why are you calling so early? Is everything all right? David, I need you to pull up all policies under my name. Everything. After a few minutes of typing, David's voice changed. Eleanor, there's a $5 million life insurance policy here that I don't remember processing. It's dated 18 months ago. Beneficiary is Brandon. Did you work with another agent? Eleanor's blood ran cold. She'd used the same insurance agent for 20 years. David, I never took out that policy. But I have your signature here, your medical records, everything. This is very sophisticated fraud, Eleanor. Someone had access to your most private information to pull this off. It's sophisticated, Detective Santos explained the next morning, spreading evidence across the conference table. Whoever did this has medical knowledge. They knew exactly how to forge your signature because they understood the slight tremor in your dominant hand from years of surgery. They also had intimate access to your personal information, your routines, your vulnerabilities. Eleanor stared at the forged documents, each one a masterpiece of deception. How long has this been going on? Based on what we've found, at least 2 years. But here's what's interesting. The activity has accelerated dramatically in the past 6 months. Almost like someone is preparing for an event. What kind of event? Detective Santos pulled out a final folder. We've been monitoring communications from the identity theft ring. They specialize in what they call inheritance acceleration, targeting elderly wealthy individuals and expediting their deaths to access their assets. The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. You think someone wants to kill me? I think someone has been setting up your financial ruin as a cover story. Make it look like you're suffering from dementia, making poor financial decisions, becoming vulnerable. Then an accident. A medical emergency. Something that looks natural for a woman your age. Eleanor's mind raced. Medical knowledge. Access to her home. Understanding of her routines. Someone who could make her death look natural. Dr. Blackwood, Detective Santos said gently, we need to talk about who has access to your life. Eleanor sat in her car outside the police station for an hour, unable to process what she'd learned. Not just the financial theft, though that was devastating enough, but the timeline Detective Santos had shown her. The identity theft had begun exactly 1 week after Brandon introduced her to Becky. The life insurance policy was taken out the same month Brandon started insisting on handling her finances. The acceleration in theft activity coincided with Brandon's recent conversations about her slowing down and maybe considering retirement sooner rather than later. And there was something else Detective Santos had mentioned, something that made Eleanor's blood turn to ice. The identity theft ring specialized in recruiting medical professionals, people who understood how to cause natural deaths, people who had access to drugs, medical equipment, patient records. People like her son. Eleanor drove home in a daze, her mind refusing to accept what the evidence suggested. When she pulled into her driveway, Brandon's car was already there. Mom, he called cheerfully from the kitchen. I brought dinner from that Italian place you love. Becky's joining us. I hope that's okay. Eleanor walked into her kitchen and saw them together, Brandon and Becky, moving around her space with the easy familiarity of people who belong there. Becky was setting the table with Eleanor's grandmother's china. Brandon was opening a bottle of wine from Eleanor's private collection. They looked so perfect, so loving, so normal. You look tired, Mom, Brandon said, kissing her cheek. Everything okay? Eleanor stared into her son's eyes, the same blue eyes she saw in the mirror every morning. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just a long day at the hospital. But as she watched Brandon pour the wine, she noticed something she'd never seen before. The way his hands moved with practiced precision, measuring exactly. The way Becky watched him, not with love, but with calculation. The way they exchanged a look when they thought Eleanor wasn't watching, a look that spoke of shared secrets and careful plans. Eleanor excused herself to freshen up and went to her study. She had to know, for certain. She called Detective Santos from her cell phone. I need you to run background checks on two people, she whispered. Brandon Blackwood and Becky Chen. And I need you to do it tonight. Dr. Blackwood, are you safe? Do you need us to? I'm fine. Just please. I need to know who these people really are. She returned to dinner and played her part perfectly. Laughed at Brandon's stories, complimented Becky's earrings, discussed the hospital gossip. But she watched. God help her, she watched everything. The way Brandon checked his phone during dessert and nodded slightly to Becky. The way Becky excused herself to use the bathroom but came back from the direction of Eleanor's study. The way Brandon kept steering the conversation toward Eleanor's declining health and her need to take better care of herself. You know, Mom, I've been thinking you should have a full cardiac workup. Just routine, but at your age, with the stress you've been under. Eleanor's radar went up. As a cardiac surgeon, she knew her own heart better than anyone. My last EKG was perfect, Brandon. Why would I need? I've already scheduled you with Dr. Martinez. He's excellent with complex cases involving older patients. Eleanor had never heard of Dr. Martinez, and no one made medical appointments for her without her knowledge. Brandon, I'm perfectly capable of managing my own health care. But Brandon pressed on. Mom, you're 62. You work 18-hour days. You're under enormous stress with all these financial issues you've been having. Dr. Martinez specializes in cases where patients might not be fully aware of their deteriorating condition. The implication was clear. He was setting up a paper trail to suggest she was mentally declining, making poor decisions, becoming a danger to herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Santos. Urgent. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m. Come alone. Trust no one. Eleanor barely slept, her mind racing with the implications. The next morning, she used her hospital credentials to research Dr. Martinez. What she found chilled her to the bone. Dr. Martinez had been sanctioned twice for overprescribing medication to elderly patients. His practice specialized in cognitive decline consultations, and he had a disturbing pattern of diagnosing healthy patients with early-stage dementia and severe anxiety disorders requiring heavy medication. More disturbing was his patient list: wealthy elderly individuals who had died from natural causes while under his care, often just months after their initial consultations. The deaths were always ruled accidental overdoses or adverse reactions to legitimately prescribed medications. At 9 a.m. sharp, she met Detective Santos at a small cafe across town. Becky Chen doesn't exist, Detective Santos said, without preamble. The woman your son is dating, her real name is Sofia Petrov. She's originally from Romania, part of an international medical fraud ring. She's been using the identity of a real nurse who died in a car accident 3 years ago. Eleanor gripped her coffee cup so hard her knuckles went white. And Brandon, she whispered, your son is in debt. Massive debt. Gambling, bad investments, a lifestyle way beyond his means. He owes money to some very dangerous people who don't accept "I'll pay you later" as an answer. Detective Santos pulled out a thick folder. But here's what's really interesting. Brandon made contact with Sophia's organization 18 months ago. Right around the time he would have realized his debts were spiraling out of control. The timeline clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Brandon hadn't met Becky by chance at the hospital. He'd sought her out, recruited her, brought her into Eleanor's life as part of a plan. The original scheme was just financial, Detective Santos continued. Steal enough to pay off his debts, disappear, let you discover the theft after he was gone. But his debts kept growing, and the people he owes money to got impatient. So the plan evolved. Into murder. Into inheritance acceleration. With Sophia's help, Brandon could make your death look like natural causes, maybe an adverse reaction to medication, Maybe a heart attack brought on by the stress of discovering your financial ruin. Either way, he inherits everything, pays off his debts, and starts fresh somewhere new. Eleanor sat in stunned silence. Her perfect son, the child she'd raised, sacrificed for, loved more than her own life, had been planning to kill her for money. But Detective Santos wasn't finished. There's something else, Dr. Blackwood. We've been monitoring their communications, and they're accelerating the timeline. Based on what we've intercepted, they're planning to move within the next few days. Eleanor spent the rest of that day in a state she'd never experienced before, cold, calculating fury. She was a surgeon. She was used to making life and death decisions with perfect precision. And now, she was going to operate on her own life. That evening, she called Brandon. "Sweetheart, I've been thinking about what you said about slowing down. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is time for me to retire and enjoy life a little." Brandon's voice was carefully controlled. "That's wonderful, Mom. Have you thought about the logistics? The practice, the house, your finances?" "Actually, I was hoping you and Becky could come over tomorrow night. I want to discuss transferring everything to you sooner rather than later. I've been having some health concerns, and I want to make sure everything is in order." There was a pause. Eleanor could practically hear Brandon's excitement. "Of course, Mom. Whatever you need. Should I bring the paperwork we discussed?" "Yes." "And Brandon, I love you. I hope you know that everything I've ever done has been for you." "I love you too, Mom." Eleanor hung up and immediately called Detective Santos. "They're coming tomorrow night. Are you ready? We'll have the house surrounded. Hidden cameras, recording equipment, the works. Just remember, you need to get them to confess on tape. We need evidence of their intent to harm you." Eleanor smiled for the first time in days, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Don't worry, Detective. I'm very good at getting people to reveal their true nature." The next evening, Eleanor prepared dinner with the same precision she used for surgery. Every detail perfect, every element in its place. Brandon and Becky arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, both dressed beautifully and carrying briefcases full of legal documents. They looked like the perfect couple helping an elderly relative organize her affairs. Eleanor served wine, an expensive bottle she'd been saving for a special occasion. This certainly qualified. "I've been thinking," Eleanor said as they settled in the dining room, "about legacy, about what we leave behind when we're gone." "You're not going anywhere for a long time, Mom," Brandon said, but Eleanor caught the look he exchanged with Becky. "Well, we never know, do we? That's why I wanted to talk to you both tonight. I want to make some changes to my will, transfer some assets now while I'm still capable." Becky leaned forward, her eyes bright with what someone else might mistake for concern. "Are you feeling all right, Eleanor? You seem different tonight." "Just tired. Actually, I was hoping you might have some of those pills you gave me, Brandon. The ones that help me sleep." Brandon's hand went to his jacket pocket. "Of course. Though maybe we should finish our business first? I brought all the paperwork you'll need to sign." "Wonderful. But first, I'm curious about something." Eleanor sipped her wine and watched them both carefully. "Becky, how long have you been a nurse?" "About 8 years," Becky replied without hesitation. "And where did you train?" "Boston University." Eleanor nodded. "That's strange. I called Boston University today. They have no record of a Becky Chun in their nursing program. In fact, the real Becky Chun died 3 years ago in a car accident in California." The silence that followed was deafening. Brandon's face went pale, but Becky's expression didn't change at all. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Brandon's voice cracked slightly. "I'm talking about the fact that your girlfriend is actually Sofia Petrov, a member of an international fraud ring specializing in medical insurance scams and identity theft." Becky, Sophia, smiled then, and it was like watching a mask fall away. The sweet, caring nurse disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. Well, Sophia said in an accent that was definitely not American, this is unfortunate. How long have you known? Brandon asked, his voice barely a whisper. Long enough, Eleanor replied. Long enough to know about the debt, the plan, the life insurance policy I never signed. Long enough to know that you've been stealing from me for 2 years. Long enough to know that you brought this woman into my life to help you kill me. Brandon's composure finally cracked. You don't understand, Mom. I never wanted it to go this far. The money. I just needed the money. I was going to pay it back, I swear.
When?
After I was dead. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Brandon was crying now, the successful doctor facade completely gone. I just needed time, and then the people I owed money to started threatening me, and Sophia said she could help. I said I could solve his problem, Sophia interrupted, her voice matter-of-fact. Americans are so sentimental about family. It makes you weak. Eleanor stood up slowly. You're right about one thing, Sophia. Family can make you weak, but it can also make you very, very dangerous. She walked to the window and opened the curtains. Outside, police cars lined the street, their lights dark, but their presence unmistakable. You see, while you two were planning my death, I was planning something else entirely. Brandon's face went white. Mom, please. Please what? Please forgive you for planning to murder me? Please understand that you were just trying to solve your problems? Please pretend that the son I raised and loved would never hurt me. Eleanor turned back to face them, and her expression was colder than either of them had ever seen. You want to know what I've learned in 30 years of surgery, Brandon? Sometimes, to save the body, you have to cut out the diseased tissue, no matter how much it hurts. Sophia was the first to realize the full scope of what was happening. She reached into her purse, but Eleanor was faster. I wouldn't, Eleanor said calmly, producing a small device from her pocket. Everything you've said tonight has been recorded and transmitted directly to the police, including your confession to planning my murder. That's not legal, Brandon protested. You can't record us without consent. Actually, Brandon, in Massachusetts, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. And since this is my house and you were planning to kill me, I think I had every right to protect myself. Sophia stood up abruptly. We're leaving. No, Eleanor said quietly. You're not. The front door opened, and Detective Santos walked in with a team of officers. Dr. Blackwood, are you all right? I'm perfect, Detective. Did you get everything you needed? More than enough. Sophia Petrov, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Brandon Blackwood, you're under arrest for financial elder abuse, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit murder. As the officers moved to handcuff them, Brandon broke down completely. Mom, please. I'm your son. You can't do this to me. Eleanor looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing her child's face. No, she said quietly. My son died 2 years ago when he decided my life was worth less than his debts. You're just the disease he left behind. But Eleanor wasn't finished. She'd learned something important about revenge. It wasn't enough to simply stop the people who had wronged you. True revenge required them to understand the full scope of their loss. As the police led Sophia away, she called out to Eleanor. You think you've won? Brandon will be out in a few years. He'll inherit everything eventually. Eleanor smiled. Actually, Sophia, he won't. She turned to Detective Santos. Detective, could you please explain to Ms. Petrov about the documents I filed yesterday? Of course. Dr. Blackwood has legally disowned Brandon Blackwood and removed him as beneficiary from all her accounts, insurance policies, and will. She's also filed a civil lawsuit to recover all stolen funds, which, given the evidence, she'll almost certainly win. But Eleanor still wasn't done. "There's something else, Brandon," she said as the officers prepared to take him away. "I called the medical board this morning. By tomorrow, your medical license will be suspended pending investigation. The hospital has already been informed of your arrest. Your career is over." Brandon's face crumpled. "Where will I go? What will I do?" "I suppose you'll figure it out. After all, you're very good at solving problems, aren't you? Just ask Sophia." As they were led away, Eleanor called out one final message. "Oh, and Brandon? The people you owe money to? I made sure they know exactly where to find you in prison. Apparently, they're very interested in having a conversation about your outstanding debts." 6 months later, Eleanor stood in her study, looking at the wall where Brandon's photos used to hang. In their place was a single new picture: Eleanor at a medical conference, receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. Detective Santos knocked on the door frame. "Thought you'd want to know. The trial date has been set. Brandon's lawyer is pushing for a plea deal." "What kind of deal?" 20 years for him, 25 for Sophia. They'll have to pay full restitution, though given their circumstances, you probably won't see much of your money back. Eleanor shrugged. "I don't need the money. I just needed them to understand that betraying someone who loves you isn't a victimless crime." She turned to look at Detective Santos. "Do you think I was too harsh?" "Dr. Blackwood, they were planning to kill you. For money. I think justice is whatever helps you sleep at night." Eleanor smiled. "I sleep very well these days." After Detective Santos left, Eleanor sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She had work to do, real work, the kind that saved lives instead of destroying them. But first, she had one more call to make. "Hello, Boston University Medical School. I'd like to establish a scholarship fund. The Eleanor Blackwood Foundation for Medical Ethics. It's for students who demonstrate exceptional moral character and commitment to the Hippocratic Oath." As she spoke, Eleanor felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. Not the peace of a mother who loved her child, but the peace of a surgeon who had successfully removed a cancer before it could spread. 2 years later, Eleanor received a letter in prison mail. The return address showed Brandon's name. Inside, in handwriting she'd taught him when he was 7 years old, was a short note. "I've learned something about betrayal, Mom. It's a lesson I'll never forget. And neither will you. P.S. I still have friends on the outside who remember how much they owe me." Eleanor read the letter twice, then calmly picked up her phone. "Detective Santos? It's Eleanor Blackwood. I think we need to talk." If you enjoy the story and believed Eleanor served Brandon the right dose of revenge, consider subscribing to the channel. Ring the notification bell to get notified of new revenge stories I drop every day you don't want to miss. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.